Hello there, and welcome to PoliTalks United States Politics and Environmental Politics. Today we will be taking a look at a recap of the 2022 midterm elections, House and Senate results, as well as governor. And then we will be discussing how the results of these midterms will impact the environment, true to the name of this channel. So, a lot has happened since my most recent script. So, we've seen here that Republicans have won the House as expected. However, this was, of course, nowhere near as many seats as they were expected to win. They actually are on track. There's actually only one uncalled race in California's 13th district, although that one is looking likely to go to the Republicans. So what we're probably going to see here is a complete mirror image of Democrats' current majority of 222 to 213. And this was expected, but certainly Republicans were expected to gain more seats. I believe 538 had them as winning around 225, 228. So it's still a good result for Republicans, but this election as a whole, compared to prior expectations, was very poor for Republicans. And then the Senate is an even worse story for Republicans because, of course, they lost the Senate. And that was due to several key Democratic wins in states such as Arizona, Nevada, and perhaps most importantly, Pennsylvania was a flip, going to John Fetterman by over 5 points, or nearly 5 points. And we still have one uncalled race in the Senate as well, which is going to a runoff. Although if you've looked at the betting markets or polling or predictions, it is looking more likely than not that Raphael Warnock will be elected, giving Democrats a 51-seat majority, and that would actually be a net gain for Democrats of 1 seat. And that would still be very influential. Yes, Joe Biden, as we will discuss today, is very unlikely to get much legislation passed, but he can still make judicial and cabinet nominations with the Senate majority, although it would be certainly nice for Democrats, especially going into the brutal 2024 map, for them to have an extra seat to buffer their majority. Now, let's just take a quick look at how this election happened. And what we see here is actually in many competitive states, Democrats did very well. So let's take a look at, for example, there were some competitive districts in Maryland. Those went to Democrats, 2nd district, and then in other states, in Kansas, for example, Democrats won there quite handily. We've seen this in states. Michigan was a flip for Democrats. Yes, they did lose a seat, but very narrowly, as you can see, 0.5%. That could have really gone either way. And then we've seen in many seats, yes, for certain states like Iowa, again, this is a narrow loss, 0.6%. These are by no means blowouts for the GOP, as would probably be expected. And then Washington, a shocking result. We have Marie Gluesenkamp here is defeating Joe Kent. This is actually noted as a toss-up on the CNN website, although I believe most people going into this election were very confident that Joe Kent would win this race. Oregon, Democrats won 2 out of 3 competitive seats and lost this one narrowly. So as you can see, in many competitive states, New Mexico, for instance, Democrats were able to flip a seat there. Alaska, a deep red state, or it used to be at least, but Mary Patola, just yesterday we learned she won by around 10 points in a seat that went for Trump by 10 points. And Ohio, I could go on and on about the Democratic Party's success in many competitive states, with the exceptions of, Florida, Iowa. Although here's where the main problem comes in, and that is seats in deep blue states, actually, is where Democrats suffered, especially New York. Take a look at this map. Look how many competitive races there were in New York. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 competitive races here. And guess how many Democrats won? A single one. And this was a very poor result for Democrats. Or actually, there were 10 races and Democrats won 2, but this is very narrow. And let's take a look. So some of these are actually blowouts for Republicans, especially that one. And we can see Democrats just had a very poor night in New York. Kathy Hochul, the incoming governor, was reelected with a far smaller margin than was expected, and or she was supposed to have. And Democrats ended up losing a handful of seats in New York. And the thing is, if Democrats had won even most of these competitive seats, they would probably be holding the House right now. So California, again, not as poor story for Democrats, but they still fell behind in many key seats, uh, especially around Orange County. And if they had replicated their performance in many competitive states in these safe blue states, then they may have ended up holding on to the House. So we can see here how it was possible for Republicans to achieve the majority, although certainly it was a better night for Democrats than expected, and this puts them into a very great position going into 2024, at least for the House, because these districts in New York, many of them Biden won, often by up to 10 points. So if even if the Democratic nominee loses the election for president, they may have a coattail effect in many of these swing districts, and that may actually propel Democrats to flip the House. Then, of course, the issue for Democrats is the Senate, but that's an entirely separate story. And so we have the midterm results, but now it's time to analyze what effect these results has on the environment and the politics of the environment. So we can see here, this website gives a bit of a context, but about how Republicans aim to stymie Democrats' agenda if they take control of the House. And as we can see here, Republicans, one of their goals is to regain energy independence. So that is not explicitly anti-renewable energy or pro-fossil fuels. But if you can see here, the Republican Party has strongly opposed various bills by the Democrats to enact climate change legislation. So what we're going to see here is that Republicans are going to be able to block many of Democrats' policies and legislation relating to climate change. So we're certainly not going to see any action on this front the same way we did in earlier this year when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed. Although this is not to say Biden is completely handicapped. He still has the Senate, so he can make judicial nominations and cabinet nominations that align with his climate priorities, and that is a major positive. And then, of course, he still has executive action. So this certainly wasn't the best case scenario for Democrats, but it was pretty close. Many of these seats were close. If Democrats had even done better in New York or California, like I said, they would hold the House right now, and that was not even seen as a remote possibility by many people coming into this election. So Democrats had a great midterm election, but Republicans did manage to take control of the House. I actually do not know whether they would have had redistricting not occurred, although I think Democrats may have ended up retaining the House. So that's all for today, and I will see you in future videos. Goodbye.